So there I was, doing my best to make peace with my status as a failed author of multiple genres, when a collection of dirty fairy tales I had written as a favor to the boss accidentally became a bestseller for our tiny publishing house. Salutations, fellow readers, writers, and killers of time on YouTube. My name is Martha Jones, and in the spirit of sharing information to perhaps save my fellow authors some headaches, I would like to use the androgynous sounds of my voice to share with you a few words about Smut, Sweat, and Tears, or 5 Lessons Learned in 3 Years of Naughty Books. Lesson number 1. Write about something local, and locals will buy it. My caveat here is that this trick works well, but not equally across all localities. If, for example, you live in a tiny town of 700 people, and you choose to write about that town, you may accidentally cap your interested readership at 700 people. Not good. If, on the other hand, you set your story someplace that gets written about all the time, like Paris, Rome, New York, or London, you may still be able to write a story that distinguishes itself among its book-bound peers, but you are unlikely to do it with setting. The sweet spot seems to be population-dense cities with a thriving local art scene and a lot of local pride that has hitherto been underloved as a setting for fictional stories. Think your Cincinnatis, your Kansas Cities, your Sacramentos, or your Louisvilles. Louisville. I have now said it 2 of the ways it gets mispronounced all the time and have thoroughly irritated everyone. As it happens, the boss has lived in a lot of places, but currently resides in Kentucky. So when it came time to set her fictional murder mystery somewhere, she opted to set it in a place where she spends a lot of time. And I would say that if we are doing a Kentucky event, something like 30% of the people who get as far as picking up her book will read the first 10 words of the description on the back and go, "Ooh, it's set in Louisville." Sold. And 30% is a lot, y'all. For the purpose of full disclosure, I should point out that I do not know if this trick will work equally well with my book, because my latest is 10 short stories long, and only one of them is set in Louisville, but it is the one that concerns Louisville cryptids, the headliner of which is the Sheep-Goat Man, aka the Pope-Lick Monster, and I have yet to meet a lover of cryptids who has lukewarm feelings about his, her, their beastie of choice. So if you end up curious how that book did, remind me we had this conversation later in the year, and I will be happy to report how it went. Lesson number 2. Not all gimmicks work for all sales channels. My favorite advertising tactics are the ones that are many decades old and are largely format-proof. Like if you include, in the back of your book, a plug for your other books. It is not functionally more expensive, whether your primary sales are in print or in ebooks, and this is a tactic that has worked on me since I was 10 years old. I gotta think it works for other people. Taking the time to craft a good back-of-the-book blurb, which more often than not translates into your online description. Never time wasted, especially for in-person sales, where more often than not you can start the conversation with, "What do you like to read?" Excellent. Read the back of this and tell me what you think. If you're excited about your new book, and you can find a way to translate that excitement into in-person sales or online presence, your life as a self-promoter gets so much easier. 10 out of 10, highly recommend. Then there's the stuff that is incredibly channel-specific, like if you are a wizard with SEO, keywords, and hashtags. First of all, congratulations, teach me your ways, please. But if it happens that you end up brought into the in-person sales, perhaps bullied by a friend, or mistakenly allowed it to be written into your contract like I did, the boss recommends a micro-pitch of between 2 and 10 words, ideally 6 or less, with which to catch a prospective reader's attention, after which you can take your time explaining your book a little further. Your cyberpunk retellings of Macbeth, or your Jane Austen meets Philip K. Dick, work wonderfully in this category and are well worth taking some time to craft. But with online sales, there are all sorts of wonderfully inventive ways to louse those up. For instance, when the boss and I were first workshopping the idea of the Naughty Book line, she wrote, I wrote. She mostly got busy and forgot about the project. I didn't. So I repackaged the stories, and the following summer they ended up selling really well. At which time I floated the idea of maybe having another of these collections. And she said, okay, but it has to be called Multiple Lorgasms, and it has to be written under the name Icy France. In person, this works beautifully. It reliably gets a laugh. Having Icy London and Icy France together on the shelf often sells both books. Unfortunately, when you go to your search engine and type in Multiple Lorgasms, Amazon thinks you have committed a spelling error and tries to redirect you, And the web gremlins that you've been telling you were IC London for the last year go, who the hell are you? They don't know that these are complimentary goods. All they see is a new author trying to make a name for themselves, and you have to start all over again. So anyone who is telling you that consistent branding is your dearest friend, please listen to them. You may not think you have one worth mentioning, and then one day you have to start over and go, oh yeah, maybe that was worth something. Lesson number 3. Sometimes what we write is not for us. If by chance you have seen other videos on this channel where I talk about writing, you may already know that I hate love scenes more than war, famine, and pestilence. Seriously, I will have the whole book done. Thousands of words. I'll have the cover designed. I'll have the copy written. I'll have a new author bio ready and waiting. And still have 5,000 or so words of love scene that I've written around for months because I hate them. I hate them so very much. And I mention this again to reassure my fellow writers, especially the green ones, that you don't have to love every part of the writing process. In fact, you can reliably struggle with exposition, or fight scenes, or crawling out of your world-building rabbit hole to construct the necessary evil that is the story. And you can still be good at your job, provided you have a comprehensive understanding of genre norms, you don't skip out on something that the majority of your readers were maybe looking forward to just because you don't happen to like it, and you learn how to write that stuff well enough that it does not feel like a chore to read, even if it felt like a chore to write. Lesson number 4. Some hills are worth dying on. A minute ago, I mentioned that it was perhaps not a good idea to bypass things just because you don't happen to like them. But there is a particular genre norm in which I personally abide in defiance, and have since story 1, and that is the monster erotica norm of non-consensual sex. And to any of my fellow authors who feel comfortable writing about that, awesome. I wish you nothing but happiness, joy, and prosperity in your writing. The problem as it concerns me is that before I was an erotica writer, I was a fantasy writer. I wasn't a great one, but I tried. And in those days, very few things bothered me quite as bad as an author or his fanboys who insisted not only was non-consensual sex in your fantasy a right and proper thing to do, you couldn't have proper fantasy that was historically accurate if you didn't put in non-consensual sex. First of all, fiction that is based on history is its own thing. It's called historical fiction. Second of all, no matter what anyone tells you, fantasy writers aren't writing about knights and castles and swords and dragons and mermaids because they are historically accurate. We're writing about them because they're cool. So if I put non-consensual sex into my fantasy, might a reader who does not know me assume that on some level I also think it is cool? I don't know. Who knows what good or evil lurks in the heart of your local author? All I know is that there is no room for sex sans consent in my fantasy. And lesson number 5, don't let perfect be the enemy of done. When I first caught the eye of my publisher, I was writing snarky vampire dialogue, and was convinced that I had no business writing a second vampire book if I couldn't make it at least as good as its predecessor. So I did that. 6 years later. Which, in case you're curious, is too long between sequels for anyone who's not doing sales numbers in the millions. Even then, it's pushing your luck some. Therefore, I would politely recommend that if your heart or wallet or both are occasionally tugging at you to write a sequel, take advantage of that sooner than later, and do your best to get it out within 6 months to 2 years of the last book. If you need more than 2 years, take it, and never grow oblivious to quality, but be advised that you might be starting over with a new readership. As always, thank you for giving these videos a shot. There's a new book in the IC series, for sale right now this second, under the name I See Someone's Underpants, because we're slow learners at my publishing house. And whether or not this one sells might determine whether I retire from smut, or start thinking how I'm going to make another book happen under ICUP. Until we meet again, take it easy. Loves you. Bye. Hey, I got through without saying the F word. How unusual.